Before the pandemic, my job was to remind my clients to use money responsibly and always repay their loans on time. But a few years later, the person who couldn't repay his debts became me. My name is Zheng, and I'm from China. Right now, I'm about $84,000 in debt. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic became a turning point in my life. But it was not the main reason for my debt. I don't want to put all the responsibility on the pandemic. My own misjudgments played a big role as well. At that time, I was in charge of a subsidiary of a larger company. Our job was mainly helping clients solve their financing problems. You can think of it as a kind of intermediary service. We helped clients choose suitable loan products and earned a service fee. At that time, many banks wanted to reduce staffing costs and lower the risk of overdue loans, so they outsourced some of their loan products to partner companies. Through some connections I had built in the past, we were able to access a few very competitive loan products. Of course, as a partner, we also had to take on part of the risk if clients failed to repay their loans. Because of that, we had to place a security deposit with the banks. Before the pandemic arrived, everything seemed to be moving in the direction I had expected. At that time, my ex-girlfriend and I had been together for almost 2 years, and we had already started thinking about getting married. I already had a small apartment and a car, but I knew that if we got married and had children in the future, the cost of living would increase a lot. So during that period, I was constantly looking for ways to earn more money. By then, I had already built up a large base of clients, and about 90% of them were business owners. Some of them trusted me a lot, and a few even became friends. Based on those resources, I decided to start a company to provide additional services for these clients, such as business registration and accounting services. It wasn't a completely impulsive decision. At least that's how I felt at the time. My ex-girlfriend was also in a similar line of work. She used to work in the financial industry and later moved into business registration services. She mainly did administrative work, and in that area she was actually more professional than I was. At that time, I didn't plan to quit my job immediately. I thought that if the company didn't work out, at least my girlfriend and I would still have stable jobs as a backup. After renting an office, we slowly started hiring employees. From that moment on, my cash flow began to feel a bit tight. Occasionally, I would use credit cards or online loans to manage short-term expenses, but at the time, I believed everything was still under control. Among the people around me, having credit cards and loans was very common. Maybe because my job looked relatively stable, I was able to get credit cards with fairly high limits. In fact, I had started using credit cards as soon as I entered the financial industry. Sometimes it was simply to help friends complete their bank card opening targets. Gradually, I accumulated more and more credit cards. I always repaid them on time and maintained a good credit record, and the banks kept increasing my credit limits. In reality, the clients who needed loans often overlapped with those who needed business or accounting services. So when we started the company, the beginning wasn't particularly difficult. Hiring employees also went smoothly, and by the second month, we had already built a full team. After running the company for about 5 months, the Spring Festival was approaching. In the last month before the holiday, the company finally started making a profit. Around that time, I also left my previous job so I could focus more on the company. Back then, I was full of confidence and expectations for the year 2020. During that Spring Festival, my parents came to Chengdu to spend the holiday with me and my brother. But what happened next is something most people already know. The COVID-19 outbreak began to spread. At first, I only saw some news reports about it, and it felt very far away from my daily life. But around the middle of February, the situation started to become more serious. On that day, my parents were preparing to leave Chengdu. I planned to pick them up from my brother's place and take them to the station. But when I arrived at the entrance of my brother's residential community, my ex-girlfriend and I were stopped outside. The security guard told us that the community had started access restrictions and visitors were not allowed to enter. From that moment on, Chengdu and much of China entered a period of strict pandemic control. I don't want to spend too much time discussing the policies behind those measures, or whether they were right or wrong. That's a very complex topic, and people from different countries and backgrounds often see it very differently. For me, it was simply the moment when my life began to change. My work stopped, my income dropped, and my debt slowly started to grow. So instead of debating the past, I would rather focus on how I try to move forward from here. Later, things continued to get worse. Restrictions became stricter, and it felt as if the entire country had been put on pause. Periods of restrictions and reopening continued to repeat, and that situation lasted for nearly 3 years. My company eventually closed during the second year. To be honest, I didn't want to give up easily. I kept telling myself that maybe things would get better next month. But looking back now, closing the company earlier might have been the wiser decision. The real reason I couldn't continue was very simple. I had run out of money. All the credit cards and loans I could use were basically maxed out, and the office rent for the next quarter was coming due. In the end, I made a very difficult decision. I closed the company. The last money I had left was used to pay my employees' salaries. I had thought about shutting down the company earlier, but these employees felt more like teammates who had been fighting alongside me. For a startup, hiring people and keeping them is never easy. Most of the people I hired were either introduced by friends or were friends themselves. When I finally closed the company, I already knew what would happen once I started missing payments. I thought I had prepared myself mentally, but what happened afterward was far beyond anything I had imagined.